In the know, nonstop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
And welcome in Purple Access. Judd Zolgad, Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune sports columnist, executive producer Declan Goff, sponsored by, yes, our friends at Surly Brewing. And don't forget about our watch party at Surly post-game vent line October 16th for the Dolphins game, and also by our friends at TCL. Enjoy more with TCL. Chip Scoggins, I'm going to start you off with a statement, and I am curious. I've been saying this all week long, but I'm curious if you agree or disagree. Last year at this time, 4 games in, Vikings are 1-3 and lost close games. This year, 4 games in, 3-1, and the last 2 games obviously have been incredibly close. I don't think that the Vikings win the back-to-back games that they did this year against the Lions and Saints last year. Do you agree?
No, because they proved they couldn't win close games.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's essentially why Mike Zimmer got fired, because they had so many one-score games, which, Judd, is every NFL game a one-score game?
Yeah. Yes.
It literally is. I mean,
basically.
So that's why you hear coaches and players talk so much about situational stuff, and they use that word, situation football.
Yep.
It's because every game's a one-score game. It's either a field goal game or a touchdown game, and you got to figure out a way to win those. And last year, for myriad reasons, not just defense, but that team was inherently flawed when it came time to figure out how to win a game. And I don't know how good this Vikings team is,
right?
But they figured out how to win close games so far.
Yep. Well, and I'll say this, a month in, so 4 games, the conference is not that good. No. Philly's good. The Vikings, I think, are jumbled in with a bunch of teams. But to your point, if you can win close games, which you're going to play a ton of, you're going to make the playoffs. So like, I don't watch this team and think, oh my God, they are far superior. I watch this team and think what you said, situationally, including special teams, which has been outstanding.
Well,
is great.
That's the thing. I mean, this whole notion of the NFL, like, oh, you're playing a bad team. Well, yes, maybe by record, but this isn't college football where if you're playing a bad team, you should drill them by 30. You know, I mean, the margin of error is so small, and so I think that's the takeaway from this start, Judd, because the offense is not clicking in the way that we thought it would. The defense, I looked this stat up. Opposing quarterbacks are almost complete. Like, what's the percentage? 69%. I mean, they have the 3rd highest completion percentage against them. Yeah. So they're having some issues pass defense. I'm glad you mentioned special teams because we never talk about it, but we saw Sunday how that can win a game for you. And this new coordinator, Matt Daniels has done a really good job. So, that's what the NFL is, figuring out how to win close games. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always have to have style points. Now, you don't want your team, ideally, the Vikings will look more efficient on offense and score touchdowns instead of field goals, but it's not. I think we said from the beginning, right, this is going to be a work in progress, and that's bearing the fruit now because this offense has a long way to go.
Yes, it does. And I think I do not think that this is by any means a championship team. I think it's a playoff team. But to reach that goal, I think there's 2 things here at play. One is the offense needs to ascend substantially, and it can, but it needs to. The second thing is the defense needs to just improve, because I don't look at this defense with aging players and this scheme and think, oh my God, this defense is going to be great. I look at this defense, and to your point about completion percentage, say if they can increase the competency and pressure just a bit more, the offense should ascend enough to make up for the flaws of the defense.
Yeah, let's start with the defense. I mean, we say going in like, concerns with the secondary, and we're seeing that. But I thought you'd see more from Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith by now. Now, Zadarius has 2 sacks, and he was had some plays last week, but just consistency. I don't know with Danielle, is it
I don't know.
coming back from missing 2 years? Is it a new position? Because I was talking about this some of the other day. It's like, Judd, he's still lining up at defense end a lot. So it's not like that part of it's not new. Is he getting extra attention? I mean, I'm not sitting here breaking down the film. So, is he getting chip blocked? But it hasn't translated yet. And, we know that sacks tend to come in, a lot. Like you'll get 3 in a game and then all of a sudden, they stack up on each other. But he hasn't had the impact that I thought he would.
No, and here's the thing. So PFF wise, he's actually grading out pretty well. So like he is, he's not playing poorly. But here's the incredible stat. Against the Packers, he had a sack, first game, and a quarterback hit. Since then, 3 games, nothing. No sacks. Yeah. More importantly, he hasn't hit a quarterback.
Yeah.
Like he is not, and I gotta think that that's partially on scheme. I have to.
But he's grading out well, so does that mean he's, getting pressures,
it means that he's doing, I think it means he's doing his job per se, but he's not necessarily, like we're used to him
sacking the quarterback.
To use a football cliche, flashing, right? Like he flashes. Oh my God, there he is. I think on the game on Sunday, I think I heard his name as far as the play-by-play once, and it was on the tackle of Dalton. That was it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Now, there is parts of this is new, right? I mean, standing up, moving inside, although he did a little bit, but that's new. But we're also seeing him at that familiar spot in end where it's, that should be familiar. I do wonder, Judd, is this just I don't think it's just one thing. This is what it is. But I do wonder if it's, hey, man, he missed almost 2 years of football. And he's still trying to get back to the explosiveness that he had before these injuries.
Yeah, it's possible. But you know what's weird about that, Chipper, is he didn't play a snap in 2020. He came back and played 6+ games and had like 5 sacks. So he was playing well. I think it's a combination of things. But there's no question that this team, if its defense is going to improve, needs him to flash more.
Well,
they have to.
Yeah, him and Smith, they got to create more pressure to help out their back end because it just feels like they're so vulnerable against the pass right now. And so, but you're right. It's like they weren't going to go from what they were last year defensively to, okay, now they're a top 10 defense. No, that's not with the personnel.
Right.
Whereas the offense, you look at the personnel, it's like that has to be a top 10 offense and in scoring, and they're not close to that right now. And they're not running the ball effectively as they could be. Kirk is not. He's just not. I think Seifert phrased it right. There hasn't been the magic wand. If people thought it was going to be a magic wand with Kevin O'Connell, it hasn't been that. So
yeah.
How much of that is new scheme? How much of that he's still trying to figure this thing out and not playing free? As what's the word that O'Connell uses? I want him to play. It was a free mind or a cluttered mind. Yeah.
Calm, basically. Stay calm.
Yeah, calm mind. Yeah, calm mind. It's funny. He mentioned after game the other day the throws, kind of lamented the throws that he didn't make.
Yeah.
So it's like he's processing. He knows,
it's a great quote.
But it's not. It's just not working the way he wants.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about that because I think that this is going to be an evolving and really intriguing discussion. First of all, to his credit, the last 2 games he's played absolutely key roles in late game comebacks, which the last 2 years he has improved. But you know what? His statistics are down, but they're winning games. Yeah. And there's definitely more there. So one thing I go back to, and I didn't like it at the time, but I guess it was true, is I think it was after one of the OTAs, we asked Kirk about, this offense is designed for you, basically. It's going to be great, right? And he's like, oh, hold on a second here. It's changed a lot, blah, blah, blah. Which is typical Kirk. But we've sort of seen that. And I guess what I'm curious about is how much more can O'Connell milk from Kirk? Because it's got to be more to be successful. But again, we complained for how long that Kirk didn't have that clutch gene. In the last 2 games, he's had that. So like, I'm sort of torn here because I don't want to rip a guy who has won 3 games when a year ago we all said, typical Kirk, Vikings
win
after 4 games.
Yeah, it's I think the way you should look at it is you haven't got what you thought you're going to get out of the quarterback, and he's admittedly hasn't played to the level he wants to, and they're 3-1, which
exactly
I got to think he's going to play better, right? As he gets more comfortable. This goes back to, Joe, we talked about this in preseason. I got to have flashcards for the first time in my career. This thing's complicated. It's all new. It wasn't going to look perfect from day one. And that's not to make excuses for him, but I think you have to be realistic about it when he's talking about this is something he's never had to do before. Use flashcards because it's so complicated.
Yep.
And then you don't play in the preseason to kind of work on some things to think that, okay, this thing's going to function at a high level from day one and be consistent. And we've seen times where it's looked really good. It just hasn't been consistent. And, but he has made plays. I mean, heck, the throw to Jefferson on the go route, which you were screaming for last year.
I want to go route.
Last week you said, give
me a go route.
Manufacturing, just give him a go route.
Yep.
That was perfect. That was on the money. That was a perfect throw. So, the check down to, was it Mont that dropped it? If he catches that, the stats are going to look different. So, we should mark down this date and then say 1 month from now, what is our conversation like?
Right.
If a month from now, if we're still having this conversation, we're going to say, no, wait, whoa. This, there might be more alarm. But in a month from now, we're saying, you know what? That was just growing pains in a new offense. I think it's going to be that. I really do.
I think you're right. And I also think this, and I think it's taken place in some games, but I think it's going to be something that O'Connell has to process and do, which is at times simplify things. I mean, the one thing that bothers me about offensive geniuses or like I'm a schemer, right? Too often it gets too complicated. And like you're dealing with 11 guys who have to be in sync, okay? And if I practice this on Wednesday, it might look great. Oh my God, we're high flying. We're the Globetrotters of football. And you get to game day, it's murky. It's more difficult. That's why I said the go route. Let Jefferson run, crossing routes are great and things. But here's my thing with Justin in particular that I think I've seen now. When you have him just go on a 9 route, a go route, just, take off, he makes catches that are really impressive. When I have him run crossing routes, he's always, and I don't blame him, but he is very aware that he's going to get hit and he drops balls. It's things like that. So in this case, I'm not really down on Kirk. I am curious to see how everybody begins to adjust to maximize things. And that does not mean in 3 years, it's different. You've got different personnel, different players, and everything works. Crossing routes, it all works. But I do think that O'Connell has to be very aware of what certain guys, including his quarterback, who, by the way, is not Stafford. We're seeing that. He's just not. What they do well, and for at least the time being, sort of showcase that. Yeah,
well, and that stands to reason because you can see one thing in practice and training camp all you want, but that's not going to give you a true picture of what guys do well when, hey, there's a pass rush and he's not wearing a red jersey and can get hit,
Correct.
And the other, let's go back to that. It's like he saw more pressure this week. That was probably the toughest game Brian O'Neill had, I think, that I've seen in a long time. And you're going against Cam Jordan, and he's a great player. He's phenomenal. But the pressure, there was more pressure there, blitzes. But I don't know if it's simplifying or adjusting, and maybe they're the same thing, but adjusting to, what guys do well, what works, what makes Cousins have that calm mind, and I think it's a moving target. I think it's something that's going to evolve this entire season.
Oh yeah. And that's fine too. See, I think the reason why I am, pretty optimistic at this point too, is my expectations aren't huge. Like I'm not now saying Super Bowl. The conference is going to give you an opportunity. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still, what's weird about this too, Chipper, is part of the issue, in my opinion, comes back to what Zimmer told Joe Schmidt at the beginning of last year. And this was not fixable in 1 year. Your depth is still not great.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
Yeah, that's going to take a couple draft cycles, I would think, to get where you want.
Yes.
So I do think the passing game will start to click and be more explosive and not as conservative. It was interesting the way O'Connell called that game. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, he said, we're going to be aggressive. And we've seen that at the end of the first halves where, like last week, Detroit, they had 50 seconds and no time. I'm trying to go score. We saw that, at the end, we're going to be aggressive and try to score and not settle for a field goal. I feel like it got a little withdrawn in London with, at the end of the first half where he didn't call timeout after the Justin Jefferson no gain. Like he let 30 seconds off the clock. The 4th and 1, not going for it there is like it was interesting. It was just kind of a departure from what we've seen the first couple weeks. I don't know what to make of that.
The 4th and 1, I think his response on Monday was truthful, which is I had just called a great play, but I don't think he was mad at Munt. That's the play where I think is it Jeff
Thielen, right?
Well, yeah, yes. Thielen is open, and Kirk missed him, and I think that was the play. That was the desired play. I think allowing all of the time to go off the clock then after the Saints lost the ball again was a vote of no confidence in Kirk in that situation right then. Because he didn't lose track of the time.
No, well, I was watching. So when Jefferson hits the ground, it's 50 seconds because they got the ball back at 56 seconds. It took 6 seconds. When he hits the ground, it's 50 seconds. You're at your 20, and he just let it go down to the 22, and so basically there you're settling for a field goal unless you throw it in the end zone, which they didn't. I don't. Was it I don't know. It was weird. It's like he's been so aggressive in times, and to just kind of say we're just going to settle for the field goal here was. I don't know if he didn't have confidence in his offensive line, the way things are going there.
It was something.
Yeah. So it was that was unusual from what we've seen. And I'm curious. The other thing I'm curious to see is what are Dalvin Cook in the running game?
Yeah.
He's definitely beat up.
I think he's lost a step.
You said it a couple weeks ago, and
I think he's lost the explosive step.
You don't see it. You don't see that burst like, oh man, he's getting ready to hit a home run here. And there are a couple times where you thought maybe he could break one, but he's definitely. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with a shoulder that got popped out and you're putting it back in, his body's a little beat up, but his yards per carries I think is down. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see if they can figure out a way to kind of spring that, get that going. I don't know.
Famine, feast has become famine. I mean, that's that because Chipper, he used to have that. He would plant his foot and just like Peterson, gone. Like, good luck. I just don't see it now. And look, you know what? He is, for that position, had a ton of wear and tear, and he's getting old for that spot. And the most interesting thing I think that we are going to see, unless things shift dramatically when the season does come to an end, is the assessment of veteran players. Dalvin, Eric Kendricks, Hicks, Harrison Smith, who is not grading out well. There's going to be some guys that I think longtime fans are going to be surprised because the Vikings are going to at least explore, does this still work for us? Yeah,
and it's, it goes back to the competitive rebuild and having guys that instead of turning the roster over completely the first year, does that happen year two? Now you have to factor in contracts and salary cap hits and all that stuff to figure who,
Right.
some you can't do. But yeah, I don't. But I go back to Dalvin. I thought in that Detroit game he was about to get on track to where he was starting to look like, and then he fumbles and the shoulder pops out, and so has he lost a step? It just doesn't seem like, I don't know if it's scheme or if it's physical, but you just don't see that your edge of your seat, like he's getting ready to pop one right here, No. And he's felt like that when he had when he had the outside and he had put his foot in the ground and cut it back up, and that's where he was at his best, and it just hasn't been that explosive.
Do you recall the run against, I think it was against the Cardinals, and it might have been in a preseason game way back when, and he had an opening like between the guard and the Cardinals defender that was like a quarter slot, right? A sliver, and he put his foot in the ground and cut between it and was just gone. And I remember thinking that's the type of run that you don't get for long, right?
Yeah.
Like 4 years, 5 years maybe, and then that's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still think there's a way for him to be productive in this offense. Whether he's, the Dalvin or whatever it is, but they just have to figure it out. And same with Kirk. I mean, there's just, it's going to be a constant tweaking, I think, to figure out how to make this all work. And it's clearly not there yet, but I don't think it's reason to panic either.
No. And I do think this. So when I say that, in my opinion, Kirk is proving he's not Stafford, I mean this. Matthew Stafford, I believe, and this probably comes from being with a terrible Detroit team for so long, has no conscience.
Yeah, take chances. I'll tell you what the hell.
Dude throws a pick. Let's go. Next play. Yeah. I think what O'Connell is learning, and I mean, we have seen this, a mistake flusters Kirk for a certain amount of time. So when he throws a pick, it ain't next play, let's just keep going back. And I think what O'Connell is trying to do, in addition to just call plays, is he's trying to now manage Kirk's mentality.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard Cousins, over the years say this, like anytime you're like, do you think you wish you could take more risk? And he's like, well, I think there's something to be said about protecting the ball. It's like, that's always his first comeback. Like,
yes,
it's like that's his way of saying, I'm not going to be, slinging the ball all over the place and just kind of haphazard, careless about it. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's not so good, right? You wish you would be a little less risk averse, but and that was the grand experiment. It's like, can O'Connell kind of change his personality, change who he is? Probably easier said than done, right? We thought that because he knows him, he's offensive guy. Kirk's going to be showing up with wild hair and like he'd been to a bachelor party, just shirt,
chains, chest hair, unbuttoned shirt, unbuttoned. Hey, boys, what's up? It's Kirk Cousins. Let's just go. You're right.
Yeah. So, but within that, you can still, take some shots down the field and do different things. So.
And I think that Kirk can, and I think that Kirk will. So, and I will say this, post-game Sunday, we did have a big step with Kirk, because the quote that you referenced, where he basically goes through, I could have done this, that was new. He didn't used to do that ever.
In detail. Like he'll say, he'll just say, there's some things.
Yep.
He broke it down specifically, like, hey, I could have pumped it here and had somebody open here. I mean, he went through it, which is great.
And now, in Kirk's mind, I believe Kirk sees all of those options as risks, because the month pass should not have been a risk at all, and it really wasn't. So I think what we're dealing with is Kevin O'Connell is learning now what Kirk, like, we go back and watch that film, and it's like, of course he can make that throw. And by the way, he can. But Kirk deems that to be a risk. And so like, I don't think that Kirk is oblivious to the fact that there are plays to be made. I think that Kirk is predetermined to not want to make a mistake. And now the question is this: can O'Connell free him up? But if he throws a pick there, you know what's going to happen, Chipper. He's going to dwell on that pick.
I should have gone. Yeah, I should have gone. Yeah. The next step is, because you could see. I mean, it was fascinating him going through those plays And the way, he's like, I had Jefferson here if I'd been a little more patient, or just let it develop. So he's seeing it in his mind, like, and he probably hears O'Connell's voice in his head when he's doing it. But can you take that next step and say, okay, I know what I should have done here, but in the situation, go do it. And I think it's probably part of the process. I mean, it's like to think it's going to change overnight. It's like, nah, that's not. Human nature doesn't work that way, right?
Correct. And it's both guys too. It's O'Connell as well. Like he's going to have to reset expectations to a certain point, and Kirk's going to have to move as well, but he's not going to change. And Chip, I think the one thing that we saw in some way, shape, or form with the 2 or 3 throws he talked about post game Sunday was this, and this is Kirk flashbacks to week 2 Philadelphia, right? Yeah. Because the Jefferson pass that got picked by Slay in the front corner of the end zone was obviously supposed to go to the back, but Kirk had pressure. And I think Kirk said, well, hold on a second. I tried that play, and I basically screwed up. Jefferson with the wrong route. Now, that was not Kirk's fault, but you know what? He sure as hell is going to think about that. These are all the things that Stafford don't care about, and Kirk does.
No, it's, the short-term memory. I mean, Stafford is, he's a different personality, different character, but that's where you hope, and I'm sure he's doing it. O'Connell, like, hey, man, it happens. In Bowman's like, that's, the risk was worth it, because if you do hit on that and we get a touchdown, then, you don't want him to be turning the ball over a lot and putting your team in a bad, but so you have to find the balance. And that's where I always wonder if Cousins can move the line to where that balance, but I feel like Sunday was different in the fact that he, in a win, didn't gloss over those particular plays, like, and he articulated it publicly and was sharing that and kind of lamenting the missed opportunities that turned, let's be honest, touchdowns into field goals. And you're playing with fire if you're going to try to win with field goals.
Absolutely. Sunday, the Bears, your expectations?
I would think that they that feels like a win to me. Bears can't really throw the ball. They're in full rebuild. I would think being back home, gives them a jolt. So, yeah, I think I don't know what the spread is, but that feels like a game you should absolutely win.
Yes. 7 points, by the way. 7 points is the spread, which I think is fair.
That feels like the appropriate amount.
I am also, so yes, I think to your point, the week by week evolution of the offense will be intriguing to watch. In this game in particular, though, I really want to see some pressure. Like Fields can move, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I just don't think, and this is on Donatel as well. So this is not just all players. I want to see more creativity. Like what you have now, right? So find a way to at least get home sometimes and create pressure.
I know, his MO is probably not to bring a lot of blitzes, but if you're not doing it with your 4 guys, you're gonna have to get pressure. And right, you got inexperienced quarterback who's going on the road, loud environment, bring pressure and try to create confusion for him and make it tough for him. And I think it's as much on Donatel. If you're not getting it one way, you have to get it a different way, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last thing. What the hell happened on Saturday with the Gophers? My God, why did I believe in that collection? What's wrong with me? That game was awful. Your thoughts?
It was, that's as poorly as you can play. And PJ said it right. They didn't deserve it. I mean, the errors were weird. Dropping, wide open passes in the end zone, missing a 28-yard field goal. I didn't like PJ's going for a 4th and 1 at his own 29 in the first quarter when you're only down 7. It was just a really, really poor performance, sloppy performance by them. And I didn't see it coming. Obviously, the level of competition jumped up from what they had been facing, but that was a left turn that I didn't see coming. And so now, The Big Ten West is wide open. I don't think you could say there's a clear favorite because it's there's a bunch of teams that are lumped together that I don't know who I would, who's going to come out of it as the champ.
Pardon my French. It sucks. It's a terrible freaking. It's a terrible portion. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah.
AL Central, Big Ten West, and you know what? The National Football Conference.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, the NFC. I will say this: we weren't sure how good Philadelphia was going in there, and you thought, well, is it just the Vikings play bad, or they're a good team?
They found a quarterback.
He's good, and they're built right. That defense is good.
Yep.
I think they're the best team right now until someone knocks them off.
Agreed. Talk to you next week, sir. Thanks again.
Brother. We'll
see you, Chipper. Bye.